First of all, archetypes are patterns of energy that we carry. I mean, everything about us has archetypes, but specifically these seasonal archetypes, depending upon the time of year that you're born. You probably already are very aware. If you're born in the fall, it's very different than if you're born in the spring. You're at a different cycle, a different part of the cycle. We see that cycle as beginning in the spring, at the equinox, and then traveling through the summer solstice, I should say the June solstice, and then the fall equinox, and then back around to the December solstice. And these archetypes are all, their relationship is bonded on what we call modalities, which is ways of being in the world, or dharmas, that ways of being in service. We could say that these modalities are different than mainstream, which would refer to them as cardinal, fixed, and I don't know what their other one is, but we refer to them
mutable.
Thank you. We call that in service to spirit. Whereas we would call cardinal to be culture bearing. In other words, the pillars of the society that form the communities, the families, the structure of humanity. And then we have the what we would say in service to spirit is in spirit to all sentience. I mean, you in service to spirit includes Virgo. It includes that devotion to the cycle of life and to animals. I mean, if that's one of your archetypes, you may be in love with plants, or you may be more of a priestess and have more of a focus on ceremony and being with the night sky, and really recognizing how great mystery is in everything. And then the third category is self-exploration. It's interesting to me how part of my family that's very much culture bearing would see oftentimes, and this is true in general, they say people who are here to explore and to bring forth certain ideals, to model them for humanity, they often see them as being self-centered or selfish, and that's not what they are. They actually have a really big role to play. If your archetype is Leo, you are role modeling radiant self-love, so that it gives other people permission to hold this energy if it's not a major one on their chart. If you're that's just one example, and I won't go into all of them, but I think that if you start at the beginning of spring and you look at Aries, again, that is one of the culture-bearing ones. They also have an element that is a subcategory of their modality, and it's very individuated. So Aries, being a householder, also has this very intuitive, actional way of being. You think of the seeds as sprouting through the ground in the spring. In the patriarchal 5,000 years, it was a time to go to war. And hopefully that's shifting. I would want to help create a new intention there. But the key words for Aries would be like fierce, warrior, protector. Those are for what has been in our history, but it's also about commitment, courage, enthusiasm, and guardianship. And those would be maybe where that archetype is evolving into, or what its essence is about, rather than its historical content, which I mentioned earlier. And then the gifts are, these people are, they're all in, and they're dedicated, and they're trusting, and they're pioneers that forge a path for others to follow. And they get things started, which is real interesting, because we notice some archetypes get things started, others carry them forth, and others take them to fruition, which if you think about it, has to do with the moon cycle too, right? A different meaning of the different quarters of the moon. So the challenges of Aries can be fighting just for the sake of fighting, or being so black and white, or overly competitive. Those can be challenges, and it's something maybe they're learning to balance in this lifetime. At the turning of the ages, you could say that Aries is the defender and the upholder of the cosmic order, with a trying to recognize the genuine righteousness and the true integrity and goodness that humanity is serving. So it is a warrior, but it is becoming a more gentle guardian with compassion. I like to think of, how would they do it in Bhutan? I often ask myself that, because again, that's removing judgment. Mm-hmm. You think of how it's done in Bhutan. The next archetype that comes to mind, of course, is Aries, the earth sign, which again, that is a self expression archetype that's exploring beauty and pleasure, stability, comfort, aesthetics, intimacy, especially intimacy. It is, if you think of spring, after those buds burst through, the next thing happens is they blossom into this beautiful environment of scent and color and sound that comes with spring. And that is Taurus, totally. It is sensuous. It is beautiful. And if you have Taurus on your chart, you kind of get how you want your environment to be beautiful, how you want to dress in an elegant way. Those are the traits of Taurus, just being Taurus. The gifts are really the mastering, the ability to experiencing the embodiment and the aliveness and the blissful pleasure and the ecstasy of being in a body. So again, it is an earth sign, which the earth is about embodiment. And the gifts can be the ability to embody that in aliveness, and even the blissful pleasure of really owning your ecstatic life force. So, again, challenges can be being lazy or stubborn or hard to change. And I admit I am. I have a Taurus moon. I have a hard time changing. You can be stuck in a cultural idea of beauty, or you could be really conservative about taking risk because, again, you like that stability. But those, again, those aren't faults. Those are things that perhaps you came to experience to bring into balance. So at the turning of the ages, perhaps the task we could say that Taurus has is to assist in recreating heaven on earth, to go back to the garden, to reclaim the sensual self and the second chakra. So, yeah, I mean, you can see how different that is from Aries and how really important and how we really need this. If you go to the air sign that follows it, and you will notice that there is an order to these that repeats itself around the wheel with both the modalities and with the elements. That is really beautiful to look at. If you take advantage of the free intro 0 class, it'll explain all of that and show you charts and really make this come alive in a bigger way. But again, this is in service to spirit. It's in service to spirit through the mental capacities and the mental gymnastics that Gemini is capable of. It is an air sign, which is again about thinking. So it's a free electron. It is the jokester. It is the eternal youth, the muse, the coyote person, the crazy wisdom, which I totally love. I love having Gemini in the mix. I do not own it myself, but boy, do I love having it around me, especially during those deep Pluto cycles, to keep you going, to laugh at yourself and the absurdity of the world sometimes. Peter Pan is a good example. And you kind of know you're with someone who has Gemini if they're shape shifting. If they're a little, maybe they can kind of make you see them in the way they know you want them to be. And I've had children that are like that. It took me a long time to figure out how they were getting their needs met by showing me this side of themselves that they knew that I wanted to see, and maybe obscuring some of the parts of their lives that I might not approve of. So it's good to understand these archetypes and how they operate. So these are the people that find the magic and the play and the fun, and they really can make you laugh, and they can be open to creative guidance and non-ordinary realms. My goodness, these people, they really like to bring the magic in and go outside the box. And so again, they do really well with you if you have a lot of Aquarius and you've got a little bit of that inclination yourself. So at the turning of the ages, what is Gemini about, or what is its essence? It's really to find and design really the best way to bypass the gates of duality. If you think of Gemini, if you think of the constellation of the twins, and where they say we come in between, our souls enter through the feet of the twins, from oneness into duality, coming in at this place in the heavens. You can, we're all here right now to try and drop the duality so that we can return to this oneness, to find the balance, to the Tao, to be at that point and be able to look both ways and to hold our ground. So we can say that that Gemini can entertain us, and it can make us think outside the box and to see things in a new way, a lot of times with humor. Daniel, I think, would say that this jokester archetype was the one who could tell the king the truth without losing his head, because he was the jokester. He played that role, and he could get people to laugh at themselves. Is this helpful? Is this what you're wanting to hear? Yes. Okay. Should I go on?
Yes.
All right. Oh, good. Cancer. Of course, our first water element here and householder element. We know how important Cancer is as this archetype of birthing and comforting and caring for a seed through its fruition. This is a very responsible archetype. It's about home and family and safe space and vulnerability. And none of us would be here if we hadn't had some good, nourishing people in our lives that helped keep it together for us as we were growing from our seed forms. So we're here, these people are here today to reimagine home and family and creating this safe space for vulnerability, because we know that without vulnerability, we harden, our shells become hard, and we don't take in and absorb what's around us emotionally. So that's important, because there's such a buildup, I think, of trauma through many lifetimes that we are trying to shed and move beyond right now, so that we can be open-hearted and loving, and that is being vulnerable. So that's, again, a lot of what she teaches. She nurtures, she provides this healthy foundation for a child or an idea or a seed, and she kind of restores the presence of the divine feminine for a culture that's been pretty orphaned, a global culture that I think we could all agree at this point in time has some pretty serious issues. So, yeah, her challenges could be giving too much, being an overgiver, giving to receive, which I don't experience too much with the Cancer people I know. They're mostly just overgivers because they get from giving. It gives them energy. And if you know people like that, you'll know what I'm talking about. So, oh goodness. At the turning of the ages, Cancer is probably trying to redesign our society in such a way that it nourishes all of the people on Earth. I mean, in the past, Cancer was about just taking care of her nuclear family, but today it's the world population that needs to be cared for in a bigger sense. We need to take that responsibility on because there's too much fallout from having people left emotionally depleted and traumatized. So the revisioning, the redesign of the family, the community, the structure, it's what is done there has to be done in service to future generations to give us stability, which I believe personally we've lost. And then Leo is that, again, that self-exploration, that fire element of really learning self-love and self-confidence, personal power, having courage, having will, being an individuated self, and again, being a vision carrier, being a creatrix, I think. You know, Leo was the king of heaven. Leo is, again, something that needs to emanate out to everybody, this way of being that makes us a complete self. My Venus is in Leo, and it has been a really interesting struggle to try to reclaim that. So the intent is really to really love oneself in a really healthy way and to be the star of your own life. And for as much as we see how this is being taught to children, if they aren't in nurturing, loving families, it is kind of doing lip service to it because they need to see that expressed around them. So it's really shining light wherever you go and making it fun, because as Daniel describes Leo, they're like a healthy 2-year-old making it up as they go. And if you've ever watched a healthy 2-year-old or a puppy, which I've recently experienced, you get a full-on experience of that little Leo energy. And you might also be able to recall how some children come in that way, but by the time they've made it to adulthood, they've really had that dampened down in them. And so that's something that for this turning of the ages, we really need re-illuminated. And that link to our own divinity needs to be reestablished, because when we recognize the divine within ourselves, that light does shine forth. And again, it's about sovereignty, it's about autonomy, and demonstrating the very best qualities. That brings up to me the thought of virtues and how all these archetypes at their best are shining virtues. And when we shine virtues, we are shining divine qualities, which automatically raise the vibration of global humanity. Again, something we can all work on individually. Put questions in the chat if I trigger something for you. Virgo, again, is an earth sign, and it is in service to spirit. If you have things in Virgo, you kind of take your spiritual practice pretty seriously, whatever it is. We think of Virgo as having a lot of integrity. We think of Spider Woman. We think of attuning to patterns, which is what you're doing when you fall in love with the sky and that ever-changing pattern in the sky. You think of the priestess, and you really think about aligning to spirit and matter. And there's something really deep within to discover when one dedicates themselves to sacred work. it's very different than the rest of the archetypes because they're doing it out of this deep inner need to bring spirit into matter, which is involutionary. And we want to restore this sacred balance of life that, again, has been teetering back and forth, and to really serve the Divine Mother. That's, I think, very connected to Virgo. So again, it's being aware of the natural cycles of the earth and how to do and when to do these ceremonies, which the school is becoming much more active with. I hope you've noticed, if you've been with the school for very long, how we've changed how we do our members call on the new moon, how we actually plan a lot of our different presentations and webinars that specifically designed alignments so that we are honoring the sacredness of these as we gather together. And when we get to meet on the land, the same thing happens. So, yeah, Virgo can be over focused on the detail, and it can, it can be disruptive in that way, or they could lose the big picture because of that focus on the fine details, or they could just be too contracted because they're trying too hard. And they're not meant to be impersonal or unfeeling. They just sometimes get over dedicated or even workaholic. And those, again, are things they come to learn to balance. So at the turning of the ages, really reestablishing this honoring, this respect for Gaia, for Mother Earth, creating, again, this ceremony that supports her, honoring her, which the ancients did. And in the matriarchal times, all of the turning of the seasons, all of the equinox, solstices, and the cross quarter points were seen as goddesses, which is really a beautiful way of looking at it. They were energy patterns to be worshipped, and they had ceremonies, and they came together for these times. And I get really excited about that, but then my son's in Virgo, so hey. We'll get to Libra, another air sign that is, again, culture bearing, about relationships, and about knowing yourself through another. My Mercury is in that sign, and I only know that by having Mercury in Libra, that I have intuitively an understanding of all the archetypes. I have this ability where I could explain my mother to my father when he'd been married to her for 40 years and couldn't figure her out. I could just tell him, I just could see it. And I think it was, I didn't know at the time that I had Libra and Mercury, but that ability to just see life through other archetypes, just because you're really about relationship. That's part of who you are. It gives you a good advantage. And I know that Daniel is Libra rising and spends a lot of time with that archetype too. So it's really about, at this time, developing these equal and conscious relationships that, again, got way out of balance during the patriarchal times, when animals and women became personal possessions, and you know those stories. So anyway, it's really about being able to value everyone for their contribution and to really work in collaboration, which the school is really starting to do in a new way, in a beautiful way. That's very exciting, with lots of new students and lots of new graduates, people with new talents. And I really forecast that, even though I'm not predicting, but I think the potentiality is there for the school to just totally blossom through this in these next years, because this way of looking, this paradigm, is so healing. And it just allows, my personal thought is, if you know someone's archetypes, if you know what they are, there isn't any way you can really dislike them. There really isn't, because you understand them at a level that gives you deep compassion for their predicaments. I mean, what could be more healing than that? I don't know, but yeah, It broadens you, it expands you, it opens your heart, and it expands your mind. So again, conscious equal partnership. And then we get to Scorpio. Scorpio, again, is very, very different. It is in self-exploration, exploring all this inner aliveness. It is a water element, so it's very feeling. So you can already sense that it is very dynamic. It's a catalyst. It's intense, passion, desire. It's an edge walker. And it can be an enchanter or an enchantress. And it really masters the magic of manifestation, working with the energies of birth and death and rebirth. And these can be very small things that we can actually tap into to help people heal. Scorpio is known to also sometimes be trying to think of a shadow magnet, where we accidentally trigger people's things that need to come up to be healed. And because that doesn't always feel good, it can sometimes get projected back at you. If you've got a lot of Scorpio, you know what I'm talking about. It's learning to tread lightly with the kind of energy that we carry. My Mars is in Scorpio, and so is my rising sign. So if Daniel hadn't explained any of that to me, having been raised in the Midwest in a Catholic family, I don't think I could have ever embraced who I am, because it's just so different from what I was taught. Anyway, a Scorpio does explore the passion of life force energy, and they have to go with what turns them on, or they just lose their aliveness. So they can frequently be making changes in their life. And they go deeper than anyone else, just because of the feeling function and the fact that this is really what they came here to do. And there is unlimited life force. There is unlimited energy. We have all been taught something different. And so it is these people that I think will reconnect us with the free energy that we can access. They can have fear of their personal power. And kind of like Pisces, they can sometimes have more of an attraction to addictions. And again, these are things they've come to learn to use as tools once they have gotten through it. Scorpio is really reframing shamanism at this turning of the age, and recognizing that there isn't scarcity, but that there is this endless amount of energy. So it's about reclaiming that second chakra and their own life force energy. Ooh, wow. I don't want to take anybody too far out there. If there's we're not, I can't think I can get them through all of them, except maybe just a few sentences about Sagittarius, again, being in service to spirit, being a fire element. Life is either a great adventure or nothing, is what Helen Keller said about Sagittarius. And it, again, it's about seeking truth and purpose. And Capricorn, which again is culture bearing, it's the opposite on the axis from Cancer, is that earth element, that stabilizing element, that is the elder wisdom that many of us are here today to help again bring into the collective. It's that being responsible and managing the resources that are available to us. It can be serious, it can be sober, and grounding. And then where else? We've got Aquarius, which again that's totally different. That's self-exploration, free electron, air element. That's the revolutionary. And that's, we're a lot of we've got planets going that are in Aquarius, going into Aquarius, that we will, if you listen to Daniel's speakings, he talks so much about this shift of energy that's coming in 2023, because we will have more Aquarius working with the collective. And that can be artificial intelligence, but it can also be very innovative, very revolutionary things. So we can watch for both of that. I'm sure we'll be able to sit back and see it. Then I guess our last one is Pisces. Again, in service to spirit, a water feeling sign. Again, one of my favorites, along with Gemini, because besides laughing, I love compassion. There's a lot, it's represented by empathy, unconditional love, selfless service, the bodhisattva, this real devotional, spiritual, also joyful, channeling empathy into joy, and being very selfless. And probably one of the biggest challenges for Pisces is to get a self. Just as Aries is all about self, poor Pisces really doesn't have a self. And a lot of times they have to learn that, because they can, without a self, you can be an overgiver, or you can believe that your needs don't matter. And that sets you up for some pretty hard trips. So Pisces is about to create new ways to help and heal others. And I'm studying energy medicine, and I'm really seeing how that can be done. My Jupiter is in Pisces, so it is my Dharma. And so, yeah, so I love this stuff. And I hope that gave you some more insights into your own archetypes, and you see how non-judgmental our approach is with these archetypes.